We've talked about investing in trust a little earlier on, and some of the most powerful moments in trust building, admittedly, do happen face to face. Um, Face-to-face fundraising is often judged on a cost per acquisition basis. It can create more value, as I've learned, sitting with some very talented fundraisers at UNICEF. And I saw how it built trust. I saw how it built emotional connections. And I saw the influence it had on lifetime value, which, if it isn't a KPI of yours, it should be. Um, I'm hoping to have a conversation about the sort of halo effect of face-to-face fundraising, where it's not just one experience being accosted at a tube station, but actually it sort of links itself into brand and brand awareness. Yes, first gift, but retention, and then revenue over a period of time. So I'm thrilled, Gill, that you took my call and that you're here to have a conversation. So please welcome Gill.
You used the word accosted. We agreed you weren't going to do that.
Before we get started, will you do me a favor and just sort of give us a personal elevator pitch of you and who you are and where you work and why you do what you do?
I noticed you did this to Lee, and I thought you're not going to do that to me, are you? So hi everyone. My name's Gill. I've met some of you already, so lovely to see some familiar faces. I am currently, and have been for the last 10 years, a global fundraising specialist at Amnesty. So I specialise in face-to-face fundraising, but I dabble in telemarketing, digital, and everything individual giving. I guess for me, I got into face-to-face. I didn't plan. I don't know how many people in this room did, but I didn't plan. My career goal when I was at school wasn't to be a face-to-face fundraiser, shockingly. I don't know if I want to be one now, but I got recruited on my university campus. I think next year it'll be 20 years ago, which makes me feel quite old. And I still didn't intend to make it a career for myself then. I fell into it and stuck with it. And I've been at Amnesty for the last 10 years at the global office. And before that, running face-to-face and IG programs across Amnesty UK and a few other organisations.
So I think it'll be interesting to discover whether it can be a career in the next 20 years, and maybe we can get there. But from your perspective, what is it that face-to-face fundraising can do that my area of comfort, which is digital, can't?
It's a good question. I just want to say, just to be really transparent, I'm not anti-digital. I made a joke with you a second ago that everyone's on phones and laptops, and I'm here with my notepad, which I love. I don't go anywhere without it. You make me feel so much better. But no, I'm not anti-digital, far from it. I have conversations every week encouraging more testing, more optimization, more investment in digital. We need digital. It's dynamic. It's incredibly important as a fundraising channel. I'm not here, I know, to talk about that, so I'll stop. But yeah, I'm not anti it. But for me, you asked me what face-to-face can do that digital can't. Before that, for me, it's why do we even need face-to-face? If digital is growing and so great and scalable and debatably takes a little bit less work in some respects than face-to-face, I'm not sure it does. But if you ever have run an in-house face-to-face team, I don't want to do that again. Aged me terribly.
Is that 'cause you're
I'm actually
working-
21 and I just look at this.
But did it age you terribly in your world because you work with people, and then that's where the pain point was?
Yep. It's very resource heavy, put it that way. It's expensive, as well as it carries risk to it, like any interaction does. And as Lee pointed out, that's not just human interactions, digital ones do too. And that brings me on to my point. For Amnesty globally, out of every 10 donors, and we've got face-to-face in 31 countries, but for every 10 regular donors that gets brought into our organisation globally, 7, on my last count, I probably need to do it again this year, but 7 come through face-to-face. It's huge for us. And I know, speaking to others at the IFL groups, it's not dissimilar for them, some even higher. I know Danny, obviously, UNICEF, incredibly important channel. So my point is, I think of course you need both. And if, I know we had this conversation a while back, if we didn't need face to face, the pandemic was probably the perfect time to give it up. And I know some organizations did, very few, but some. And I'm not speaking in the UK now specifically, or in the US, I'm speaking globally. But the work it took to relaunch, like, wow, it was horrific. And the risk involved, and the amount of boards I spoke to that really didn't want to, and the amount of senior leadership teams that thought the risk was just too high to relaunch face to face in a post pandemic world. But we did.
So what convinced them? The return?
I think, well, at the time, our finances were looking pretty good. We were spending a lot less because we'd paused all our programs, and we still had income from past years. So I want to say maybe I was part of the influence, but we also did look forward. And I did a huge amount of modelling, as my colleagues did, and we saw the impact it could have. So yeah, financially, but the return was actually, and when I say return, not talking about money, but the return to the channel was really positive. And I believe, so I believe we need it, because that would have been the perfect time to say goodbye to that channel. And sorry, I realise how long I'm speaking for now. But I think, going back to the actual original question, which wasn't why we need it, I just feel like I need to get that in, because that's what I get asked a lot. Is face to face dead? No, or I'm out of a job. But what can face to face do that digital can't? Digital is amazing for so many reasons. But with face to face, you're speaking to a human being. And I saw after the relaunches and how well they went, people yearn for human interaction. But it's one of the only opportunities to have a two-way conversation, not with a chatbot, and ask questions and build that genuine connection. And I won't, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a psychologist, so I won't go into detail. But there's that study, I think it's by Arthur Aaron, or
You'll know more than me.
or other names, but AA. But it's when two strangers sit in silence and make eye contact with each other for 3 minutes. I got made to do it at a conference last year, and I won't make you do it because it's horrific. It's so cringy, and yeah, it's quite awful, but it works. People report feeling intimacy, feeling a sense of connection. And Amnesty, we talked about trust a lot this morning. Amnesty redid that around our refugee and migrant rights campaign, and got refugees to sit opposite a stranger, member of the public, and make eye contact. And I'll send you the link to share. God, am I pitching you for Amnesty? But to share, I am a face-to-face fundraiser. But no, share the link, because it's beautiful, and it's scientific. It's not abstract. It's about, that's without anything verbal, but it's eye contact and tone of voice and mirroring that makes you trust.
This is just such a good example of perhaps how you change people's perception, even of a brand, right? In that moment, let alone a person. And those examples were super. Help me understand why you think face to face, and in your the angle of how you've positioned it so far. It feels undervalued. Do you feel that fundraising has been undervalued? Have you struggled to prove its ROI?
Yes. And it depends who you speak to. I'm going to use sweeping statements here and blankets, but I do have conversations. As part of my role, I part manage our fundraising investment fund. So we decide where to make investments. Now, the vast majority of the asks of the proposals are for face to face. And part of my role, and it's really difficult, honestly, is to show that it makes a good return. And the two most common things I get asked about are cost per acquisition and return on investment over a 3-year or a 5-year period. And they're important, don't get me wrong, incredibly important. I've seen programs that aren't run very well, that are super expensive and retention's poor, where they don't meet those criteria, and it's hard for me to fight for them. But I don't, so those metrics aren't incorrect, and I'm not going to say that. But I do feel that something's missing.
Okay.
And I know I'm speaking to people in the room that have so much experience, and I'm sure very talented fundraisers. And when I say we don't look enough at lifetime value, you might turn around and say, well, I do. I'm like, good for you. But I still don't think we do enough. And I think we need to look at, okay, cost per acquisition, return on investment, but what else do those donors go on to do?
Mhm.
And I think it's really important. And I think we miss a lot.
Where have you seen then the impact of face-to-face turn up outside of the face-to-face channel?
So, um, I think I'll give you an example. I think we've measured it incorrectly.
Okay.
And that's for me, we've got a super strong in-house face-to-face team in a country in Europe. And the manager came and said to me, like, I want to introduce single giving and petition signing for my team. So lead generation, to be frank. And I was fine with that. Many of our teams do it, sounded great. And the minute they said to me, give teams a choice to get single gifts, I was like, no, please don't. We need,
So because Amnesty only asks for monthly recurring
yeah.
at point of sale.
And I was under the impression giving too much choice and freedom to these face-to-face teams might ruin our regular giving program. That was completely untrue. I was 100% wrong. And a year later, the results were huge. But I wanted to use this as a case study. So I asked about the data behind it. And we weren't tracking or monitoring or looking or attributing to face-to-face the conversion of these single givers. None of it was getting pulled into the face-to-face program. And the cost per acquisition looked fine. The return looked fine. But the amount of income, of relationships that were happening that weren't attributed to the team. So I think we're really missing that. And there's so much more to be said. There's a study that I find fascinating that was actually shared by Danny a while ago with me from UNICEF. And it's around a study. I think it's, oh God, let me remember, 12,000 neighborhoods, Dutch neighborhoods. And the question was asked, does face-to-face have any benefit on online giving? Does it have any kind of impact? And of those neighborhoods, the ones that had face-to-face activity, and it was over a 10-year period, their online giving was threefold. Almost 3 times the amount of people that went up and signed online when they had fundraisers in the area. Now, I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a coincidence. And there's more studies that mirror that. So I think it has a huge impact.
Have you any studies around brand and brand lift?
I think so. This is a tricky one.
Uh,
Um, and I think it goes back to, I'm not going to get deep and philosophical, but what do we mean by brand? It can be really, really simple. But I've got a couple of different cases that maybe traffic increases when we're talking about starting face-to-face teams, that other fundraising channels increase, but also just traffic to your site. I've got cases where we've had face-to-face teams and programs in the local area, our bookshop revenue's gone up. People have signed up to more community events. So I think it is. I think it's more than purely. And I've got plenty more examples of when we've seen people leave additional gifts, for example, which I think is amazing. But my question is, how do we measure the impact on brand? Because I do believe it's about trust. It's about that connection, that perception of an organization.
mm.
I don't think we can just measure it in financials. But I don't think, my question is exactly how do we then? And how do we make people listen then and understand face-to-face is more than just an income generation?
Can I shift us slightly? What is it that makes a good face-to-face experience according to your brand?
So I think we all know what a bad face-to-face experience looks like, right? And they are out there. I just want to say that. I understand that I've had meetings with fundraisers where it hasn't been accurate information. So I'm going to give you all the bad things, flip it, and you've got what makes a good one, right? But inaccurate information makes a terrible experience. Rudeness does. And I'll give you an example, and it's kind of links back to the perception. This morning when I came into this hotel, this venue, which is beautiful, by the way. I got in the lift and I held the lift. Don't know if you're in here, but I held the lift for someone. We made a bit of a joke about it. But if I'd been wearing a bright yellow Amnesty jacket and I hadn't held the lift, and I'd been a bit rude and I'd huffed and I turned my back, that's just not a nice interaction. Whereas I think we all know what makes a nice interaction. It's authenticity. It's someone being genuine with you. It's stopping for a face-to-face fundraiser that is super well informed and super passionate, genuinely passionate. It's no one-liners. It's not any cheeky stopping line, which I detest, by the way. Sorry, detest. It's a really genuine, authentic, on-brand interaction, and I think there are bad ones out there, but I think these days we can do a huge amount to make sure there's positive ones. And I'm going to take this a bit further because I just thought about it and I'm not sure if it's valid, but I love it. It's our team in Brazil. And I was having a chat with Lucy, is it earlier? And we were talking about kind of good face-to-face fundraising. And our teams in Brazil, they only work with agencies. So it doesn't mean if you can only do this if you've got in-house. But in Brazil, Amnesty really focuses on social inequality, police violence, indigenous rights. And we make sure we put a huge amount of effort into making sure that we build diverse teams with the agency. So we've got people with lived experience from all different backgrounds representing, and many people that can have conversations out on the street, because it's street fundraising only back in the old school. And it's people that are incredibly passionate about what we're talking about. I'd say it's a human rights education piece as well as just wanting to sign someone up to be a regular donor. And I think everyone that walks away from one of those conversations feels empowered or inspired, even if they haven't donated. And okay, that might be an extreme example of a nice way of running a team, but I think it's important that every conversation is a positive one. And we all know what a terrible one looks like. So
From a brand perspective, how do you ensure that? How do you ensure everyone can become a competent storyteller?
oh, very good question. I think so. I think it comes down to me to two kind of main things. So I think it's equipping the fundraisers, and when I say fundraisers, by the way, assume I mean your agency partners as well, of course, but equipping them with the right tools. So the right fundraising content, true to your work, but also what actually works out in face to face and on the street in many different areas around the country. Um, to train them as storytellers, make them sure they feel important. And I think that links me to my next point, which is invest in the fundraisers. Like if we want them to be brand ambassadors, and I'll say this, I am an advocate for face to face, obviously, and I'll say it's a tough job. I've done it for many years. And you've got people stood out there that are being ignored all day, every day, or much worse, being ignored to not what you worry about. And you have to make sure that you sign up one or two, back in the old days, 3 or 4 or 5 people on the spot and get their bank details to become usually a regular donor. It's tough. It's tough. And you do it in snow and in heat, not such extremes here in London. But you need to be invested in and believed in. And yeah, we can talk about motivation, but even just how we treat it as a career. I joked about how I fell into it, and I did. But our team, one of our best performing in-house teams recently revamped their entire benefits package. So yes, good training, yes, good content, motivational techniques for your teams and make them feel valued, but pay them well. Invest in them as human beings. So in Sweden, we changed how many holidays and sick days paid they got. We changed the basic rate of pay. And it might sound silly to some of us in here, but we started supplying money for lunch vouchers, because these are individuals that don't have access to a kettle or a toaster or a microwave when they're out there all day, every day. So giving something back and really treating them like an employee of Amnesty rather than a side piece. I think it's incredibly important. Make those fundraisers feel valued, and they'll value our brand and they'll value our conversations.
Can I ask you a question? We're at least fundraising operators in this room. Raise a hand if you have gone out and canvassed or fundraised as a face-to-face individual.
Woo! Woo!
Yeah, that's not that's not a lot. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you think the experience breaks?
The experience for the donor or for the fundraiser?
Donor.
Yeah, okay. Because I was going to say just the opposite for the fundraiser of everything I've just said. I think after that interaction. So I think, yes, an experience can break if you speak to a bad fundraiser, someone that's poorly trained or doesn't kind of respect the brand. But I think actually the biggest risk is after that interaction. So if you imagine you meet me on the street and I inspire you and we have a great conversation, we hit it off, I make you feel amazing for signing up. And then you get a super generic welcome.
Mhm.
And I'll be really frank, the amount of, and I'm giving it away because I've worked at Amnesty for 14 years. So all the bad things I'm telling you is kind of clear. Great organization though, okay? But yeah, the amount of verification calls I've listened to that are just that, they sound like they're policing the interaction.
Sorry, what's a verification call?
So you sign up and you get what I think should be a thank you call, a welcome call. But quite often they're treated, and not just at Amnesty, they're treated as a way to quality control face to face. And I know that's because of reputational damage in the past. I think we should quality control it. We need to. That's for a different session, but I could talk about that all day long. Mystery shop your fundraisers. But when you're a donor and you've just had a great interaction and you get so did the fundraiser tell you this? And did the fundraiser make sure you knew this?
Wow.
It's a completely different feeling.
Yeah.
And also carrying on, and this goes two sides, making sure the fundraiser's well trained, but also what are we talking about in our follow-up communication? Does it align in tone and content? And I'll give you a kind of ridiculous example, but when I started managing an in-house team many, many years ago, this was back on the days of paper forms. And there was a little bit on the paper form that said, what area of work, or words to this effect, what area of work are you most interested in? And it was a really nice bit for the fundraiser when they were getting the sign up. And I'd been out and seen them. They said, and we want to make sure you're hearing about the thing that you care about the most. So what is it? Which area of work? And it wasn't, I am a bit embarrassed, but it wasn't until I was probably almost 6 months in, I thought, oh, I should really ask to see our tailored comms, what happens after this. We didn't even record that in our database. Not only did we not feed that into the journey that donor was getting, we didn't even, I was going to say write it down, we didn't even tap it in anywhere. And that to me is a missed opportunity, hugely. And 14, 15 years later, I'm still not seeing enough tailored communications.
I touched on this with Lee earlier on, but there's clearly declining trust, especially in institutions. Do you think, you mentioned your career has been 20 years, and the next 20 years there's an opportunity for face-to-face to become more important than it is today? You touched on not necessarily more important to revenue, it's clearly influencing that, but from a brand perspective, from a human perspective.
I think so. I think, honestly, looking back, I think it always has been important. I think what is important now is looking at how we can measure it. You asked me a question before, but I don't think I answered very well about like brand, what impact does it have? And I've got gut feel. I've got a couple of anecdotal studies. I've got some data, but I don't think we measure enough. And I'm talking from a data side of things, but also a qualitative side of things. I think nowadays, I gave you kind of the COVID relaunches and how wonderful it was that people actually wanted to have human to human conversations again. And I really resonate with what Lee was saying about you phone someone, you get an automated response, or you go online. So I tried to get put on a fixed tariff for my energy provider recently. And you know how difficult it was to speak to someone. So I think from a human interaction point of view, it's important. But yeah, I hope from a trust point of view, I don't see trust in humans going anywhere. I Another random story from me, but I told you this as well, but I almost got scammed the other day by something on Instagram that looked like Pets at Home. And I love my dog loads. And it was like this too good to be true giveaway. Um, and I think of myself as relatively savvy, but I just looked at this giveaway in this competition. And then the minute they asked me to put in my bank details, I straight away was like, nope. And I actually got an email from Pets at Home a few days afterwards saying there's someone impersonating us. I was like, I knew it. But then when I went in and got advice from a human being in Pets at Home, I didn't not trust the guy on what flea treatment I should get my dog. And I think I hope it was the right one, but I don't think we should be worried about trusting human beings. I think if we get to there, then I'm absolutely terrified for the world. So I think face to face more important, yes, probably, possibly, but I think it always has been really. It's just how we value it actually is the thing we need to look at and change.
Questions for Jill? Yes, sir.
Hi, Joe. I'll shout until a mic appears. Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Jill. Thanks for that. You gave a really, really good example earlier of one of your markets where you gave donors choice and the opportunity maybe to give cash or do a campaigning ask or something like that before engaging with a regular gift, and how obviously it was successful. And obviously this idea around clearly giving donors choice is also giving them control, therefore feeling like they're going away having done something good for you rather than feeling like you don't want their support. Why do you think the sector as a whole, and I'd say this probably more so for the UK market because I know this one better than others, but why do you think the UK market, particularly the face-to-face UK market, hasn't engaged heavily in that method of fundraising in face-to-face?
I agree with you, by the way. I think we haven't. And before supporting teams globally, I only had real experience in the UK. And I kind of alluded to it when I spoke. It's a great question, but like I think it's fear. I think it's people are scared. And when I say people, I mean me. When our coordinator of that team, and he's amazing. He's one of the best in-house managers I've ever worked with. And he called me up and we were having our regular meeting. And he said, yeah, and I'm going to introduce single gifts. And I was like, you what? Like, no, no. And I've got no control, just influence. And I tried to talk him out of it, not strongly. I said, okay, test it. But I would have, and this was a couple of years ago now, but I would have tried to gently talk anyone out of it. And I'm not proud of it. I'm ashamed of it because I was so worried about not being able to get enough regular donors. I was worried. I had a call with my mum about this talk, and I'm not sure my mum really understands what I do. Pretty sure she doesn't. And this is a true story. I spoke to her at the weekend, and she said to me, "I've got a question. Why, when I go into co-op now, there's always fundraisers, but they never let me take cash. They never let me give them cash." And I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I kind of explained it to her, and as I was explaining it, I kind of questioned myself and was like, why are we so scared of giving people options? And this team, I think I said it a second ago, they actually boosted by quite a way their regular giving sign up rate. Even I asked to see the data because I couldn't believe it, as well as boosting in year income, probably making people feel a hell of a lot better about having that interaction. And the team felt amazing because they were getting way more engagement. But I think we are scared that if we change something, it breaks what we think is the only way forward, which is a regular monthly gift. When actually, I don't think that's always the case. And I think we need to start being a bit more open, being a bit more brave, trusting the general public, our donors, but also trusting our face-to-face teams if we're talking about it for this channel, and trusting that they won't always take the easy option, that they understand we need regular gifts and single gifts. And again, shifting to investment in the training around it. But I think it's fear. Sorry, really long answer. But yeah, I think it's fear. And I think I'm still a little bit scared, but I need to embrace it and want to embrace it, obviously.
Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting. So, yeah, I think that the first thing that came to mind is that I'm not surprised that it works for Amnesty because you're such a well-recognized brand and people have that trust in you already to begin with. Do you have any recommendations, if you're from a charity that maybe doesn't have a big brand, how do you even get started in this space?
Yeah, no, of course. And thank you. We complain about our brand all the time, so it's nice to hear that. And look, what you said is completely correct, and it is different for bigger organizations, but it's not the case for us in all markets. It really isn't. So we started face to face in Taiwan. I was going to say a few years ago, but probably like 7 years ago now. Our brand recognition, minuscule, tiny. And I can list more countries that brand recognition is way lower than I thought it would be when you look at the studies. So I'm not saying it isn't easier in some ways, but again, I think although face-to-face impacts brand, and I think it can and it should, and it's obviously important. I'm not denying that. Again, it goes back to that connection and that experience. And I think if you have really well trained, I can talk to you about like logistics operationally, how to set things up, but I think it's investing in really good training. I think I've been shocked when I get the privilege, not so much anymore, but to visit teams in countries and watch them fundraise. And I'll see teams go for days without really meeting someone that knows who Amnesty is. And it still works. We still get sign-ups, but it's making sure the fundraisers are really well trained, really well equipped as storytellers, and that individual is signing up to them. Yeah, there's trust, and there's a couple of other kind of hurdles to get over. But in many of our 31 countries with the programs, we've done that. So it's making that experience really special, making sure all the elements I listed of a good kind of interaction are there. Start small, obviously, take your learnings, but I think without a doubt it can still be done. And I think actually more so for face-to-face than other channels, because that it's no secret when people sign up to a face-to-face fundraiser, they're signing up to them, hopefully as well as the organization, of course, and it's because they've inspired them because of the organization's work, but really they're trusting that fundraiser, that wow, what you've told me I need to be part of. So I think that actually in a lot of cases trumps brand. It might be different for digital site traffic, etc., etc. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Go on then.
Thanks. Ju, I just wondered if you would want this. No problem. Stop me. Thank you. I just wondered if you would verify for me the experience at the RNLI, because I've found that fundraisers that start off in face to face, number one, they become brilliant fundraisers and become resilient and all of those things which we know we need. But our experience is that people then go on to take other jobs across the fundraising directorate and actually are a great succession planning asset to us. Is that true everywhere?
What a lovely question. So there's the last conference I presented at was the International Face-to-Face Conference in Vienna, and I gave a presentation on the future of face-to-face. And for most of it, I rambled on about how can we make face-to-face a more lucrative, attractive career choice. Because for me, exactly what you have said is true. So I don't even think it's on my LinkedIn, but for 10, I started as a street fundraiser with no want to carry on and make it a career. And for 10 months, I was our interim director of global fundraising at Amnesty. Now, most new face-to-face fundraisers, you don't have that on their agenda, but it's the skills it gives you. It's the resilience it builds in you. You've got to be, hopefully, for a good interaction, personable, and you've got to be close to data and understand fundraising. And I think it definitely translates. And I look across Amnesty and I'm so proud at how many of our national fundraising directors have come from face to face. Makes my job as an influencer much easier, but it's amazing to see. And that's why I do want to promote it as a career, because it's got its challenges and its drawbacks. But yeah, I will 100% verify that. And what a lovely note to end on. So thank you.
Very good. Jill Marshall, thank you.